Evening everyone, welcome to Relove Guitars. Sam here, and we've got Stu's Yamaha Pacifica on the bench. It's a Saturday evening here in Devon in the United Kingdom. Well, United Kingdom, right here in Great Britain, and this is a Yamaha Pacifica. I was expecting don't know why, I was expecting at some point a natural coloured one, because these normally, in my experience, these normally come with black nuts. Anyway, it don't matter. It's a 1112 Yamaha HSS configuration. Just a little aside, it's nice that it's got actually proper left-hand wired pots, which kind of sets it apart from a lot of other guitars, which seem like apparently they don't even bother. I've had a good look at this at home prior to bringing it up here. I've got some various parts that are going on here. This is stuff that Stu's had sent directly to me, including the electrics here, which is going to feature a blues engine bridge upgrade. We've got some copper tape, we've got some black plastics, which we hope will fit over the Yamaha pickups. I don't see any reason why not, but having said that, you can never assume they will, because particularly when Yamaha, I think, do things a little bit differently in terms of dimensions and stuff. Anyway, I've had a good look at this. It's in really nice condition. Sorry, one-handed, two-handed turnover. No bumps, really, no dings anywhere. A few little sticky marks, which I think we'll just polish out. Yeah, it's a, what do they call this one? It's a JL, Pacifica 1112 JL. Don't know what that means really, I can't remember. Look at that nice grain down the back there of the neck. So we're going to set it. Oh yeah, of course you might have noticed it's a left-hander. Yes. So checked it out, and we've got all those things to put on it. So we're upgrading it with various things, and I'm going to shield out the cavity at the same time. Going to oil things up, we're going to polish things out, we're going to change the nut for a left-handed black Tusk nut. The reason it's black on this one, partly it matches the body anyway, but it's left-handed and it's black, and it's the only one I could get for Pacifica left-handed. There was an absolute non-existence of a white coloured one. Couldn't find them anywhere. Getting left-handed stuff, if you're already a left-handed person, you'll know is very difficult. Can be very difficult, and so I think I was quite lucky just to get that left-handed black one, which actually I think will suit, funnily enough, I think it will suit this black finish better than this creamy thing, because there isn't another bit of cream anywhere on this guitar. We're also going to go black covers here if they fit, and we're going to replace this with a chrome thing, and these are going to go black, which that's interesting, but the plate is going to stay chrome. And so kind of nice little bit of customization, black tip if it fits. And again, this is one of those little tiny things that you absolutely can guarantee absolutely nothing about whether this will fit, that replacement tip. I may have some spare ones which I could try. Okay, so observations about the playing of the guitar. Sharp ends to the frets, so we need to soften those out along the way. Change the nut. The first thing I noticed is there's back bow on this. There's no relief in the neck. Hardly, well, there's no relief. It's just ever so slightly back bowed, which means notes down here are kind of barely playing. It might be actually a little bit better on this bench, but when you look at it, there's practically no relief. So we need a little bit more relief in it. The action at the nut at the moment is irrelevant because we're taking it off and we're replacing it, but it wasn't bad. There is a problem in the nut here. I don't know if you can hear it. It's not what you might think. You might think it's from there, but it isn't. It's definitely from the nut. So there's a little badly cut bit in the nut here, which is causing the G string to kind of walk side to side, or click as it goes side to side. Sorry, which could be an absolute pain in the bum. Drive me nuts. But that's okay. We'll change that and for the nut. Now, plastic for a nut is not great. Tusk is much better. I'm a convert to Tusk, but I'm also a convert where possible to an adjustable Tusk nut. Problem with this is that it's potentially, I could put an adjustable Tusk nut of this kind onto the end of there. However, this shelf is a little bit narrower than normal, but it is possible because it's still, when it comes down to it, it is still, excuse me, that's not even hanging. I didn't even hook that up. Oh, I can't really tell from there. Can I tell? Let's have a look at one I've got in production over here. Sorry about these close-ups. Here's one in production. Oh my God, you might say, look how ugly that is. It's covered in some sawdust and it's waiting to be shaped precisely. But this thing becomes a really crisp, mechanically perfect thing when I finish with it. But in its raw state, when I'm just trying to do with my not amplified eyes, I'm trying not to look through this at the same time as checking. Yeah, we see, if we use this, the string spread is very slightly wider, so unless somebody was okay with that, I wouldn't want to go in that direction. But more, wherever possible, I go with the adjustable Tusk nuts. It would have to be that style, and it's totally possible to fit one, but like I say, it would just widen the string reach a tiny fraction. But as you can see down here, there's kind of more than enough room, to add that extra millimeter in across the whole lot. But that's for another time. The action down here is reasonably high. But it's actually, I say that it's higher than I'd like, but it's not excessive. What I don't quite know yet, until I've tweaked a few things, is exactly whether or not all these frets are good. Now, Yamaha seem to have done a lot better, or they seem to be getting ever better at these budget things in terms of the frets. They're usually almost no trouble at all, which would be interesting to see whether at the action that I want to set it at, whether we get any buzzes or chokes, and I can't tell you that until now. You might think, well, what sequence would I do this in? Okay, and the sequence, the first thing to know is actually you don't really have to put the new nut on yet to do fret leveling. Okay, so we could do the fret leveling with this nut. It looks, actually it's set at a good enough height over here to do. We would adjust the action down here, check for playing, and then if we got any buzzes and chokes on high bends and so on, we'd do the fret leveling. Then once that's done, we could keep the strings on, replace, knock the nut off, put the other one on. We might sort of make sense to do that one first. But in other words, sort of do the mucky stuff first before changing out things like tuners, because they make no difference to the actual setup part of it. They'll add to maybe this. They're not bad tuners, these Yamaha ones, but these hopefully will add to the smoothness of operation. The saddles, again, there's no point taking all the strings off now, changing the saddles, putting them on, then putting strings back on, then doing the setup. So again, we'll change those later on. These had you can see there's a sort of some sort of stuff spilled on it, or something's built up on it. It's a bit of a weird substance, don't know what it is, but again, we're changing those out for these little black things here, so that's not a problem anyway. And then once I've done any fret leveling, we take the strings off, we'll take care of the changing of the saddles, we'll change over the tuners, we'll fit a Tusk thingy. Now, where did I put the black one? Have I got a black one? I thought I had a black one. Okay, I'll have a look. If not, we'll use a white one, but I thought I had a black one somewhere. What else? Yes, and then we'll do all the, if we do fret leveling, then of course we'll take the strings off, do all the polishing, recrowning, polishing, and in the polishing process we'll take care of these sharp ends here with a bit of filing and some sandpapering. Scratch plate off, shielding, change the electrics, ground the shielding, put the electrics back in, test everything. And then finally restring it with new strings, and then we will stretch out the strings fully and intonate. And I've forgotten instantly what we agreed. We've had a rather long kind of exchange of emails over the last couple of weeks about this and the various upgrades and stuff, so I've kind of lost track of what the gauge strings were. I think it was 10s, but I've just sent a message off, and I know Stu will get back to me with that. So, and also whether currently the tremolo is set to down only, so it kind of acts like a hardtail, but if you want to give it a little shimmer, you can press it down. And I believe this is my carry case, the lovely what do you call it, fur-lined. Every time I say fur-lined, I think Fergal Sharkey. Fur-lined sheepskin jacket. Yeah, so this is the tremolo, and as you'll see, it is, the springing and stuff is currently configured to a down only, but you know, with any tremolo like this, we can have it in one of three settings. We can have fully floating, which is great, and contrary to most people's opinions, as long as you've got a Tusk nut properly cut and you've stretched out all your slack and there's nothing obstructing the bridge from moving, and also these aren't tightened up too much and so on, then you can set it floating and it operates as a really good floating tremolo, and it will stay in tune. People don't think it will because normally the nut is all wrong, causing things to go out of tune, and the tremolo helps. On a cheap guitar or a budget guitar, a crappy nut helps the tremolo instantly go out of tune. People blame the tremolo, but it's this that's going out of tune. Equally, if you haven't stretched out all your strings, then that is also why use of the tremolo will make it appear to go out, well, make it go out of tune, but it's not the tremolo's fault, it's the non-stretched strings fault. And these that came on it today, I've been stretching them a few times round, and they've been giving up their slack like nobody's business. So they, you know, they've been put on at some point but never been stretched out. So anyway, see how I do it. It's in all my videos, but Stu, you'll see how I do it in this one, so that you can do that every time you change the strings. I'll take care of this bit, so this runs smoothly, the new Tusk nut, but you'll need to take care of stretching your strings every time you fit new ones, however often that is, how often ever. So I'll just check whether we're going to go, we're not going fully floating, I'm pretty certain. We could go as is now. It's effectively a hardtail. Nothing in normal play will make that rise up except using the tremolo deliberately. It's a nice sort of setting to leave it in permanently. There's no impact on the guitar. It never, when you bend a string, for example, really hard, it rarely has the strength to lift up the bridge on its own. Or the third option is to lock it down, which it just involves screwing in the tremolo claw screws at the back, and just putting tension on the 6 screws. Just out of interest, if it was a two-post tremolo system, I wouldn't want to lock it like that, because the two-post tremolo has it's a great risk of it breaking the wood that it stands in. There's a little bridge of wood between the hole that the route that this pickup sits in and the route that this block goes through, and it's not a huge amount, it's not a great distance, it's maybe at most about so thick, so it's like a bridge of wood going across there. Now on a 6 screw, these 6 screws sit in it and they all share the load, which means they actually last a lot longer. On a two-post or 2-point tremolo, all the force of both the strings pulling in that direction and the springs pulling in that direction underneath, those two loads both loads pull on the 2 posts on the unit, and that quite often cracks across the little wood bridge. So as a bit of advice, if you're ever going to hardtail a 2-point tremolo, take the loading off the strings at least and block it off with a block wedged in there if you can. But if you've got a 6 screw, you can just use the added spring load by screwing the claw screws in the back, and this thing will carry on holding the load for years without doing any damage. Okay, I'm going to transfer this camera. I need to take a stop a minute. I'll stop because I've got to check the email. But one thing I will say about this setup, I've just been in a bit of YouTubing comments with people, and for a long time people have been saying, oh, that horrible wide-angle camera you've got that, you know, bends everything and makes it all look curved and it's like your neck's warped and stuff. It's done its service, right? I've had 2 of these. I started with one and then I got a slightly newer one for a really cheap price a few years ago, and I've just run with them, partly because it was inexpensive, and partly because actually for my purposes, a camera that gives a wide field of vision is, even if it's not particularly pleasant for the viewer exactly, it's better for me to do these videos because I don't get anything, there's no profit or value in me spending hours editing things, or for that matter, constantly repositioning the camera to get things in shot. So that sort of camera has really been vital to allow me to just get on with it. And you know, if you wanted to learn something, or if there was something you could learn from it, then you know, it was, people would kind of tolerate it and go, okay, well, what's important, what it looks like or what I'm learning. However, over the years, I've been kind of hoping for some point in time where I could upgrade it a little bit, but the principle stays the same. I absolutely don't want to be constantly removing things or, you know, resetting up shots, and I certainly don't want to be editing. Sorry if you were hoping that it's going to herald in the era of Real Love Guitars edits. So what I'm going to do today, I made a decision that I'm retiring this phone that I'm filming on as a phone, and I'm upgrading to an iPhone 12, which I've been thinking of a little while now, because some people, experts in kind of YouTube content making, have shared with me how they came to a similar place where they needed to upgrade their cameras, and actually they had some pretty expensive but slightly older Sony type cameras, and they looked at what it would cost them to upgrade them all, and they did some technical comparisons, and their experience was that the video quality for their purposes, coming from the iPhone 12, was absolutely as good for their purposes, as good, and if not better in terms of convenience of how the phone could process the video and do certain tasks all through the phone, even simple edits and so on. So they made a decision to replace all their cameras, retire all their expensive production cameras, and go with iPhone 12. So having heard a few people say recently, oh, you know, I'm sick of that wide angle thing, I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. So I ordered it today, and I think it should be here tomorrow. This camera I'm filming on now will be consigned to close-ups like this, because I think it does it really well. Now it has a slight problem, as I'm just going to zoom up a bit. It has a slight problem, as you can see probably, that the frame rate on the Hawaii camera is 30 frames per second, which, and I'm not a technical freak, but apparently that is why it's interfering with the 50 cycles per second light oscillation, what do you call it? What's that thing called? Frequency of the lights and the electrics and so on. So you get this kind of, get this fluttering thing. The iPhone, on the other hand, I believe can set to the 25 frames per second, which you can't with the Hawaii. And that means, because it's divisible, 50 is divisible, 50 cycles is divisible by 25. Apparently it cancels out the flicker. Anyway, so we might still get a better shot for longer shots and flicker on close-ups. But ultimately, the difficulty of, even with an iPhone camera, is I'm going to have to find some place, some quite weird place to set this, so you can have a clear, you know, nice quality long shot, see what I'm doing the whole time, and then I can cut in. I don't mind doing editing to cut in important close-ups, but the problem with a camera with a fairly narrow field of vision, as you're going to see in a minute now when I plonk this, so I'm not doing very well, but I'm trying to avoid as much as possible the microphone bits here, which is why carrying it isn't the best thing on earth. So you'll see that you know, I can place it on this, a bit of a jewelry rigged sort of thing. The magic arm's actually very good, so I can do things like, you know, I can bring it forward and get it right up close to things, anything I want, and then I can do it up and lock it in place with noise, but you know, and I can refocus in there. So I can do some pretty nice close-ups, and either on the magic arm, or I can do them by hand. But there's no way with this kind of rig I can get a long shot that you can fit everything in, even when I'm zoomed out. So I just have to kind of try my best and see what the various things are. Now I could, there's absolutely no reason why I can't put a mount on the wall and use this arm for higher up shot, but it's not going to look like Crimson Guitars, because I don't have someone, first of all, I'm not facing you, I don't have a monitor over there so I can see exactly what's in shot and what isn't, I don't have a camera person, etc., etc. And I don't want to be standing there looking every 5 seconds. But I do know, for example, with the iPhone, the possibility of monitoring it via Wi-Fi, which we'll see if it's I can get that clever. Anyway, this has been a bit of a long diversion. Stu, you'll have to be patient because I'm going to get stuck into this. I'll stop for a minute, check your email, and then we'll get going. Okay, we've got our instructions, locked down 9-gauge strings, which is cool. We've got some here. If I can get them out of this rather stuffed pocket. It's always a good thing to have plenty of supplies rather than less. Okay, so I've put the, I will occasionally check what I can see in the camera, but I've basically set it up there, and that's going to be as exciting as the view is going to be most of the time today. Simply, apart from when we go across, I'll move the whole rig across to the soldering place so you can have some close-ups of the shielding and soldering stuff when I'm sitting down in my racy game chair, which my folks bought me for Christmas for this very office. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all, I am going to drop the action on here and adjust the neck relief, and then we'll see what this thing, I was going to say plays like, but that's not really a very good word to use because I can't play left-handed guitars. But we can see how the notes are and whether there are any chokes or anything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the neck relief. Now I'll repeat, or I'll talk or speak about what I'm doing for anyone who hasn't watched any of these things before, and Stu's benefit, for example. And of course, if you're new to playing guitar or owning a guitar, then this will be useful stuff. So it'll be a bit sort of over the top, over explaining compared to some of my other videos where I kind of assume that a lot of viewers have heard me or gone through all the basics before. But so the thing about most electric guitars, Stu, is that out of the factory, almost all of them, most of them, a great majority of them, leave the factory with uneven frets. And they do so not because anyone's terrible or the world's unfair or anything. It's just that fretting is quite a crude task, a crude operation, right? There's nothing terribly sophisticated about it. It means you're banging metal things which are a pretty standard size, but even they can probably vary microscopically in size. You're banging them into some organic softish wood, which has a degree of springiness, resistance, it has hardness in some points, a bit more springy in other points. It also has some ups and downs that you can't see in the fingerboard, which amount to a difference of maybe 1/10 of a millimeter or 100th of a millimeter, whatever. So it's a bit unscientific, and you know, ting ting ting, whether you're using a hammer or whether you're using a press, or whether you might even, I don't know if they invent a machine, I think it's done by hand. Anyway, it's pretty, it's fairly crude. And so sometimes you'll get frets that aren't seated properly, which sit up high, and you'll get some that get banged in too hard and they sit low. And your action on the guitar, the lowest action you can get before it starts buzzing, or before the individual frets start getting in the way and buzzing, the lowest action you can set is dictated by the amount of uneven frets in this whole rack, right? And the whole point about it is that a high fret will choke off the note to the nut side of it, because that fret, normally when you press the fret down and finger a note, the clearance between the string and the following fret is microscopically small, but it's usually, given the standard settings on a guitar, it's usually just enough to play the note as you're hearing there, with more or less clean. Sometimes there's a bit zzz in there, but that's playing, and there's enough room, even though when you look at it it's completely tiny, you couldn't get a pick under there or anything. When that fret is slightly high in that spot, somewhere around, it could all be high, that suddenly will disappear, and you'll get that, or you'll get something like that, right? That's a high fret, and the only thing you can do with that is to file it down to the same level as the others, but that's actually quite difficult to do. You can't just go and, well, you could go and take a file and scrape away at it until it's no longer high, but actually what you don't know is, now is it lower than the other frets? You've certainly cured the high problem, but what else have you done? You've got no real scientific way of knowing. So you have to do them all together, and in doing so you hope to remove the peaks of the high ones. But then even if you do that, you've got another problem, because you quite often get little clusters and sometimes individual low ones. And the low ones make the next one relatively high, which means even if the majority of these, let's say 21 of these, are all pretty much exactly level to each other, it only takes one fret somewhere in those 22, so 21 are level and one of them isn't. If the one of them is low, it makes the fret in front of it relatively high compared to the one that's low, which then behaves like a high fret, and it buzzes and chokes out that note fretted on the low fret. And the only way to solve that problem is to level them all down gently until you bottom out the low fret. And that's always a bit kind of scary, because you don't really know how that fret got to be low, and you don't really know if somebody didn't even put the wrong gauge in there altogether, in which case you could be doing quite a lot of leveling to bottom out the problem caused by the low fret. Having said that, in my experience of probably thousands, a couple of thousand nearly setups now, I've never found one that is so low that it couldn't fairly easily be leveled out by bringing all the others very fractionally down to the level of the low one. Now that sounds a bit careless or wasteful in fret metal. In a sense it is, but you really don't have any alternative. The only alternative you have is to pull out the low one and try and match the fret. Probably not going to be possible. You've got to match the age of the fret, not just the fret, even if you knew what the original gauge was. If this is 3 months old, it's going to be a different height than if it was 12 months old, and so on. So you're trying to pull the naughty one out, replace it with the right gauge and of the right amount of wear, and hope that you don't hit it in harder, and hope that it wasn't low because it was in a little ditch, in which case you'll hit it into the ditch as well, and it will be low again, and you'll waste your time. So there is really no alternative. Sorry to sound be the bearer of bad news. So we have to level, or we raise the action. That brings me back to what I said at the beginning, is that most guitars that you will ever get secondhand or out of the retailers or the factories will normally have the action set kind of low enough to play, but not low enough to hit the uneven frets, which as you go lower with typically what I call the last fret action or the bridge action, as you go lower at this end, that's where you start to feel and hear the uneven frets kicking in and coming into play. And the lower you go, the more they interfere. So obviously a lot of people who haven't got the means or don't know how to fret level, they will just back up again until it doesn't buzz anymore and carry on playing. And that's how I started playing guitar. That's how everyone I know, how we put up with the guitars we had. We played with what we had at the lowest action before they just buzzed uncontrollably and we couldn't live with it. So unlike, and by the way, just out of interest, there's no real direct correlation between price you pay or brand name and the amount of levelness in the frets. And that's partly because a lot of the big manufacturers really don't take that much, or don't take enough attention over the frets, because it costs money and time to do it, as you see. But it's also because even when they do, actually it's fairly unscientific. If I leveled this, all the frets on this guitar now, and we got it really low, and I sent this guitar to you, a couple of months in your home environment, you might live somewhere warm and steamy or something, or dry and arid, a couple of months in your house, and the neck will change shape. It will lose or gain moisture. In doing so, it will expand or contract. And in expanding or contracting, all of this organic stuff called grain and inclusions, or whatever you want to call it, all the natural kind of complexity of the wood, will expand and contract in odd little ways, and it will change shape in ways that you couldn't predict just by looking at it. And you might find that the low action that I set you, that you were thrilled with when you played it here, 2 months later in your fabulous desert home, doesn't play anymore, or it's suddenly got very high, and you have to make some further adjustments. That is the nature of electric guitars with necks that are made out of wood. It's as simple as that. The truss rod is not there to guarantee you a fixed shape of your neck. It can't do that. What the truss rod does is it is there to allow you, the player, to counter the natural and expected changes in the shape of your neck as it responds to varying climatic conditions. Okay, and so one of the things you might say, well, why am I sending it to a luthier? Well, you're sending it to a luthier to have those things put straight, first of all, and so that your luthier will tell, well, I'm not luthier, I'm a tech, so your tech will tell you that I'm grateful and happy that you sent me your guitar for me to work on, but you must also learn how to adjust the truss rod yourself. Do not waste your money by every time the wind blows and the neck changes shape very slightly. Do not waste your money by having to go and give the tech 40 quid for what he'll do is adjust the truss rod and clean everything and give you some new strings. That's an unnecessary expenditure. You need to, or everybody who plays guitar needs to get familiar and comfortable with operating the truss rod. And there are so many myths about it, and they get propagated in forums and stuff, and it's a shame because people grow up and develop a great fear of the truss rod. If I can just get this magnetic bit out of here. Become quite afraid of the truss rod. That isn't coming out. I've got magnets everywhere, and I just want this one in the end of my screwdriver to come out, and it won't, so I'm just going to have to get another one. Yeah, so people develop an unhealthy fear of the truss rod, which is a shame because, as I say, you never get round to adjusting your own neck after that, and you should. So I would heartily recommend you experiment with your truss rod and doing what I'm doing, and take it to the extremes, because if you do, you'll see the difference it makes and how I'm doing this right-handed, obviously, how it plays, how it changes, how it plays, and how it feels to play. The thing about adjustments in truss rods is that the truss rod is not the primary means by which you adjust your guitar's playing action. Some people think it is, and they're wrong. The purpose of the truss rod is first and foremost to counter and control the natural inclination of the neck to bend under load from the strings, and depending on the influence of the environment, it'll bend more or less under the same strings. If it's wet, it might change shape, and so on and so on. And your truss rod primary function is to control the amount of organic change that happens, so that you can keep it in a sort of configuration that feels familiar and good to you. It is a secondary effect of making a truss rod alteration is that it will either raise or reduce the action, particularly in the middle, because the truss rod creates more of a curve in the neck or flattens it out and even can put a hump into it. And really that has an impact on the way the action, the height of the strings feel here, but it's certainly not the place you go if you want a lower action. You don't just go and crank your truss rod. It's not there for that. When it changes the action, and only predominantly in the middle part of the neck, it does it as a secondary effect of the real reason you should be turning it, and that is to control the neck shape to suit the kind of environment you're in. Now, having cleared that up, the only places you do adjust the playing action on your guitar is the nut, which changes the first fret action over there, and the saddles, which changes what I call the last fret action, which is where I like to measure it for all kinds of reasons I'm not going into it, but that's where I measure it. What you probably realize is that in a way all three of those things I've just mentioned, nut, bridge and neck relief, truss rod adjusted neck relief, curvature, all three are interrelated. So if I raise the action here a foot, of course the action here is going to become about a centimetre, right, because the strings are going to be going up at that angle. If I lower this really much lower than it currently is, the little gap I just measured here will reduce. If, for example, I keep this the same but I raise the nut up, then the action here is going to rise a little bit too. Not much, because it's at the acute end of the angle, right? So for the amount of movement at the nut end, the actual amount of raise down here is much smaller proportionally, right? But you can see they're interrelated or interdependent, as is this. If you bend loads into the neck, these might be really, really low. You've got everything set really low. It feels like a low action, and suddenly you play in the middle of the neck and you're thinking, God, this feels like a much higher action. Well, that's because in the middle of the neck, it has become a higher action because you've created a U-shaped neck underneath these straight strings. So the gap down the middle here is going to be bigger than it is at either end. So those are the three principal parts of your playing action that you adjust on the guitar. And the first one I always look at is the neck relief. And that's how bent the neck is. In other words, how much force, or what shape the forces of the strings pulling on the neck, pulling the neck towards the body, what shape it's causing the neck to go into. And you can do that you can test it. If you've got a capo, put a capo on the first fret and then hold down any string you like, but you can do it on one of the E strings. Hold that down so this one is touching the first fret, so you're effectively holding down the first fret and the last fret on the same string. Because I want to have this hand free, I'm using a capo, and then what you do is you look in a sort of the center part. Now you can argue with people online whether it's the 7th or the 8th fret between these positions. I don't really care, I just go for the middle point, whatever the number it is. Who cares about the number? Anyway, I can hear by touching this there is a 1/1000th of a millimeter gap there, right? But that's too flat for this guitar. Ideally, start point, you want about 0.15 to 0.2 of a millimeter. Now that sounds ridiculously small in itself, and it is, but that's all you need to kick off with. This high E is also the same height. It's for all intents and purposes, in fact, I would say that is as good as touching the frets, which is no good. It means the neck is too flat, or even possibly is on the way to being humped. Now that isn't because somebody's cranked the truss rod and put it there. That will be because the conditions this guitar has been under over the years has changed the shape of the neck under the string loading. Heavier gauge strings will bend the neck more and put more load on it, and you may change. If you went up two gauges of strings, whatever I set up for you here today, you would need to re-look at the truss rod, and you'd know that if I set it up today and you later put 13s or something ridiculous, you were Rick Parfitt, put 13s on there, the amount of extra force would cause the neck on your guitar to bend even more, bigger curve, and you'd suddenly find that there was a lot of space down here and it would feel like a different guitar. Well, your job would be to tighten the truss rod and counter some of that force and flatten the neck out again to where you like it. So I'm going to make an adjustment because it's flat and there's no point doing any work on it while it's flat, because it's now got no room for the strings to spin, for anything to happen. Now I don't know even if you can see this. I'm going to try and just do a small bit of camera work. What I'm going to do at this point is, looking at the guitar from this end, I'm going to use my 4mm truss rod key, hex key, and I'm going to put it in the end of the neck. Now interestingly, the design here is a very deep hole, so you probably have to find a shorter, stumpier version of that truss rod or that Allen key to get in there. You've also noticed when you come to make an adjustment, you've also got in your way, helpfully, you've got these strings, so you may have to get it to bite properly, you may just want to move those two strings out of the way and then just wiggle the thing in until it's comfortably in place. Now, when you're looking at the end of the truss rod, Stu, right, looking down at the hole at the end, right, that way tightens the truss rod and it flattens the neck out. That way loosens the truss rod and it relaxes the truss rod and allows the neck, or allows the strings to pull more curve into the neck. So we're too flat, right, and it's stopping the notes in the first half of the neck play properly, and actually that's because you fret them here and they hit a fret, start hitting frets up here because there's a hump in the middle as far as the string's concerned. So it's too flat, so we need to go that way to relax it. So I'm going to re-put this in as far over here as I can at least get a start point. It's very difficult because, as I say, it's a deep hole and you can't really get in very well, but let's call that in, right? So I'm just going to crank it. Now, that's the string, don't worry about that. So that's about an 1/8, probably 45-degree turn, right? An 1/8. Now, when you're adjusting your truss rod, people sometimes get really scared and think, oh, I'm going to break it. I've got a video on my channel somewhere of me trying to break a truss rod. That was, as it happens, it was seized. But since it was seized, I thought I'd give it a good old go and see if I could snap it, see if I could, put to rest some of the fears of how people think they're very, very delicate. So I swung on this thing, I clamped it to the bench. I was literally lifting my feet off the ground on this old neck that was dead anyway, because I knew the truss rod was seized, and I could not break it. I couldn't break the hex key. I mean, the hex key was bending. I couldn't break anything. Okay, so they're very, very difficult to break. So I mean, what I would encourage you to do, if you're at this place and you want to find out the difference it makes, don't do a quarter turn like I just did. Do several quarter turns. Tighten it up. Look, watch this. Tighten it up a bit more. You have to be careful and wiggle the hex key around to get it in seated properly before you make a turn. You don't want to round off. Now I'm doing the opposite of what I said, right? I'm now dialing some more stiffness into the truss rod as if there was too much curvature. Now we know we started off with not enough. So what's going to happen with this little operation, if I could even get this thing back in, it's very difficult, actually quite difficult to get them cleanly into the hole. They're so far in often. If it's too long a rod, you won't get it in at all, matron. And if it's too short, you won't get it in either. So you have to keep on trying to get it to a place. And sometimes you almost, by moving the strings, you can only just get it to the next part of the hex, which allows you to get a bite. So look, I'm now tightening it up even more. So let's see what effect on tightening up from already flat has on this guitar. Let's play an F note. Oh, okay, that's got worse, right? And I knew it would, but then it clears up. The reason for that is I've backbowed it or humped the neck even more than it was using the truss rod, which means the middle part of the neck is actually higher than the edges, which means all the notes in this half of it get caught on the frets here because they're literally sitting up in front of those notes. And you can see they aren't playing cleanly at all. But you see, I turned it a few, a couple of quarters, and I got to see what the effect of it was. Okay, makes it even more humped. Well, I certainly don't want that because I want those notes to play. So I'm going to go back by about the same number of turns, or quarter turns, I should say. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Let's go 4. Right, and then we'll just give it a few seconds and see how it responds to that. I've got it in between positions here where I can't actually get the hex key in. There, right. A few turns. Now you want to know what difference those 4 quarter turns, that's a whole complete turn. By the way, if you ever want to just experiment and go away from where I set it and try some extremes at either end, all you have to do is remember where you started from. So 4 quarter turns or 8/8 turns as a whole complete turn, and you know that you can go back to where you were. Now let's hear those low notes down here by the nut. Aha! They're all playing perfectly. So that, forget the first bit I did tightening for a second. Imagine we picked up the guitar, I said it's got no relief at all, and we did a couple of turns to the left, right, to loosen it. Now what it's done is it's cleared those notes I was having problems with up, because what it's done is it's taken the neck from flat and gone like that, which frees these frets up and gets them out of the way of the string. And what happens is when I then re-look at the gap, and this is all without any feeler gauges, I look at the gap, hold them down, and I go, okay, there's a little gap now between the string, very small. How much do I think it is? You can hear it clicking. That's because it's now going down and hitting the thing. It's very little at all. I would probably want a little bit more relief on it because, like I said, a sort of target that I like to start with is about 0.15 to 0.2. You'll find some guitars that you come across will have 0.5 millimeter, and that will explain why, even when you've set as low an action as you can at either end, it will explain why they feel kind of hard to play around here, because the action in the middle will be, you'll have the extra excessive relief added to the playing action. Okay, so let's have a look now. Okay, I can see the gap, and I'm doing the same down this end, this side. That's not bad. Okay, so I'll stop there for a minute, because you can see the principle I've demonstrated is that A, don't be afraid to adjust your hex key. By the way, adjusting your relief in your neck will change the tuning, because the ends of the guitar are kind of going like that a little bit, a tiny bit. a tuning, I'm only doing it relative. Okay, I'm going to stop there for the adjustments on the truss rod, because it's got some clearance. It's probably about 0.1. That's absolutely fine for now. You know, if you didn't like it, you felt it was too flat, you could go a tiny bit more in the slacking department and you'll get a tiny little bit more. And if you remembered you did a quarter or a 16th of a turn, you can go back and put it back if you didn't like it. But I honestly suggest you do more of that kind of adjusting than you don't, because otherwise you'll always be at the mercy of people like me who have found out through experimentation or through practice, and we'll know this kind of secret and you won't. And I just think, since the environment changes your guitar a little bit all the time, you really need to be empowered to do that adjustment. That's pretty critical. Okay, so I've said that the first fret action on this guitar is pretty good to begin with. Now I'm going to look at what I would call the last fret action, and the reason I do that is I measure it here at the last fret. It doesn't matter where you measure it, as long as you know what it means to you when you're setting up the action. And for as far as I'm concerned, the last fret is a more useful place to measure it for me than anywhere else. So that's why I do it. And I don't do it to have arguments with other people online, because that's incredibly depressing and boring. So I will not be drawn into that sort of thing. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm using a string height gauge. It's not super accurate, but I'm just judging. And even if I'm looking at it in the wrong angle and I say it's 1.5 millimeters, and actually if you've got a sort of a atomic machine in there and it said it's actually 1.75, he's so wrong, that guy. It doesn't really matter to me. I only care about the numbers to get me to a place that I'm familiar with, i.e. a certain feel of action. If you measured it all and found that I was 0.5 millimeter out, who cares, right? It's the lowest action that the guitar will play, and it plays really well. So that's all I really care about. Numbers are only a means to an end, please. That's what I like to remember. So as it happens, a number on the last fret on the low E that I work to, as far as my eyeballs work and how this silly old piece of thing works and where I'm standing works. Standing here doing this again and again and again, what I call 1.5 millimeters is a good target for me. So I get that on the low E, and then I do the same with the other strings. Now, Stu, you'd mentioned, or you'd said earlier on in our conversations, you were kind of very nervous about the idea if a guitar had to have a shim in the neck. And a lot of people have again, a bit like the truss rod, have a great fear of, why are you shimming my guitar? Because it's something wrong. I read in a forum it's a bad thing to do. First of all, it isn't a bad thing to do. Basically, guitars have been shimmed and still are all over the world, including, Fender spent the 70s shimming, or they used a thing called micro tilt adjustment, but that's effectively a shim. You just push up the heel end of the neck, change the geometry, and you change your action. But the reason, I give you a practical reason why a guitar like this might need shimming is, let's say I'm looking to set my target low playing action that I've used thousands of times over and I know works, right? And I'm looking to set that, and I find, to my surprise, I start, let's say I measure it when it comes out of the box and it's at 3 on the A string at the last action, right? And I want 1.5 on the bass string. And I adjust downwards and I go, oh, look out, I've run out of adjustment. Okay, and it means, for example, let's say these saddles are now on their haunches, on the bridge plate. It's quite common to find that situation where I can't go any lower there, and yet we're still over 2 millimeters, and I can't give you a low action with this. And what it means is I can't give you a low action with the geometry that this production model came out of the factory with. It's impossible. There are some guitars I've had some Harley Bentons I've had straight out of the factory in the last couple of years. A little bit of paint here where somebody's dinged this off a wall, but that will come out too. A couple of Harley Bentons I can think of where it just couldn't get down to the low action that I would set. Now, you think, does that mean the people in the design shop in the factory never think that anyone would want that low action? That could be. That may be how they designed it. Nobody's ever going to want, only idiots are going to want a 1.5 millimeter last fret action on a Les Paul. Well, sorry, but they do. And there's no point writing them off as idiots if they want that. So to find a guitar that I couldn't set the target action on, basically leaves me no choice but to shim the neck. Otherwise we just accept, sorry, you can't have that nice reloved low action, and it's not my fault, it's the geometry that they built this guitar with. So that's the type of occasion where I would put a shim in to raise this end of the neck very slightly. Now people read forums and they get really snotty and they say, oh, it's terrible to have a shim because you've got an air gap. Well, if you actually look at the amount of, first of all, that their argument is always based on a notion that's never proven or substantiated, that somehow wood touching wood transmits something magical called tone to the pickups. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't an importance in solid connections on something, but I've yet to be shown how a Fender, what's that one, Antigua, is it? That lovely kind of 1970s, no, lovely, that iconic 1970s Strat, you know, with a micro tilt neck. Nobody's ever shown me how, proved to me that's a terrible guitar because it's got, the neck is tilted on a little single point shim. Nobody's ever, oh no, I can't play this, it's that bad because it's got a shim. So I'm a skeptic. I don't believe stuff until I see enough evidence to give me reason to believe it. And I don't see any reason to believe that a shim steals the mojo or the juju of a string. What is true, and I can get my head around completely, is that strings need solid anchor points in order to string properly, to do what strings do. So a nice solid bridge anchor, a nice solid nut where nothing moves is the key thing. And also, what you also, as far as I get it, if you're interested in having sustain, i.e. the string to make lots of movements for the purpose of translating them into magnetic signals here, or electrical signals, then it seems to me that you want as little extraneous movement of rattly, vibrating, resonating parts all over the guitar, electric guitar, and you want more of that energy going into moving the string to keep it going through the pickup magnetic field. If you have a guitar that's loosely put together and sort of bits aren't screwed down and everything's a little bit kind of slapdash, often you find that bits of the guitar make noises and resonate. And as far as I can tell, that's not a great contributor to sustain, if sustain is what you want. Apparently jazz guitarists in the 1950s much preferred a short staccato type of note, which wouldn't be so popular with rock musicians because they like sustain, which you tended to get with a much more solid guitar like your Les Paul, and much more solid, you know, anchor and bridge into a solid lump of maple and mahogany glued together. Your chances are your string will keep moving longer, which gives you the sustain. You get a good, you see all these people, they say, oh, listen to this, listen to that guitar, it's beautiful, it resonates, you can hear the resonance of it. Well, if you can hear the resonance of the wood particles, then you can tell that some of your string energy is rattling wood particles around instead of staying as string movement and turning into pickup output. But, you know, so just I try and apply logic to it. So you see that amount of tuning up shows how much I've lowered those strings. By the way, some people write in and say, oh, you shouldn't tune that way, it's incorrect, and they give a whole mathematical thesis why it isn't right. And I have to say, it's the difference between concert pitch and what I just tuned up to there makes no difference, wait a minute, to me, in as far as how it stretches and loads the neck, okay? Of course it makes a difference if you're playing with a band or you're playing with a philharmonic orchestra. You'd want it to be perfectly in tune. And I, of course, wouldn't use a tuning fork and just go ding dong dong. But for the purposes of putting this under tension so the neck is pretty much exactly in playing configuration, then I don't need it to be, I don't need to be measuring it with a £5,000 piece of equipment. I just need to get it pretty much audibly in tune. very quickly, we have now got the following things. We've got a little bit of neck relief, not an awful lot. Sounds like Paul Daniels, I am not. All right, very flat still, relatively speaking. We've got a low first fret action, which no doubt will have got a little bit lower. Again, how low it is, what it actually measures isn't important. What's important is that right now it clears the first fret, isn't too difficult to press down. For the purposes of checking out this guitar, whether it needs fret leveling or not, that's perfectly good. We'll get it exact later when I put the new nut on. And at this end, I've adjusted these to give me what I think is the good target low for last fret action. Now some people do things like some people speak without thinking, right? They say to me, but you're not using one of the StewMac radius gauges. How can you set these strings without measuring them against a curved radius gauge? Well, if you think about it, right? If the underlying fret is curved and radiused already, right? And if I go up X amount from each fret, what am I going to get? I'm going to get the strings sitting in a curved radius. Now I don't go X amount, I do a little gradient. I go, try it. It's not very accurate to do that with my fingers. But what I'm effectively doing is I'm using the underlying fret to tell me where to position the string. So I'm measuring, moving the string until it is on this end 1.5 millimeters, that one a tiny bit less, that one down to 1.2. Now you can see I'm covering 6 strings and a spread of 0.3 millimeters or whatever, a fraction, third of a millimeter difference across 6 strings or 4 intervening strings. It's almost impossible to be precise, but it's a very slight gradient. But to all intents and purposes, because I'm going down from pretty close to 1.5 to pretty close to 1.2, that gives me a radius. I don't need a gauge to kind of check again, right? Because I'm going up. If you go up the same amount from every string, that thing will be there, the next one will be there, because the fret starts there, it's higher, therefore the string will be higher. So following the radius of the fret gives you, reproduces that radius in the position of the strings. And some people rant and rave about that without even thinking before they speak. Why aren't you using? Because they've seen someone using that thing who used it without even thinking, because they didn't realize that setting them in relation to the last fret puts a radius in the position of the strings. Anyway, right, so I've set the action the way I like it, the neck relief, first fret and the last fret. And this is what we're now physically at, the nice low action. Of course I can't play a left-handed guitar, so there's another thing to listen out for, and it's called what I call fret slap. And it's different, and it's important to distinguish between fret buzz and fret slap. Fret slap, if you play a note, sometimes you could pick up a guitar, particularly on the bass strings. All right. You play the notes all the way up, and you think there's something there on every note. Okay. Now, first of all, it's like what's that thing where you multiple choice? No, divergent questioning, pathways. So if I say to you, you say to me, "Oh, I've got fret buzz," and I go, "Well, does the fret buzz? Does it seem to be on a certain string on every fret you play?" And you go, "Yes," and I go, "Well, that's not strictly speaking fret buzz." You go, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, it's fret buzz. Let's agree is when a single fret or 1 or 2 frets are high, or 1 fret is low, and the next fret or frets get in the way." So you tend to find fret buzz will show up. You go up, and you'll get a buzz or a kind of horrible sound in one place, and that will be much more consistent with fret buzz caused by either a high or a low fret. And that's when you find that will limit your action, your playing action, and that's one of the primary reasons I would level frets, to get rid of that fret buzz caused by uneven frets, high or low. The other thing where you get something buzzing all the way up has a lot to do with how hard you hit it for a start. If I don't hit it hard, and I'm a very light player, nothing wrong with that. Of course, if I hit it, I'm going to create a buzz. Now the thing to remember about this, and again this is something that I have to sometimes explain, although I call there to be 3 parts of the playing action, physical parts. There's the first fret action, the last fret action, and the curvature of the neck. Let's call those the 3 primary ones that are things you can set on the guitar. There is another variable in how your guitar plays, which is so uncontrollable and unpredictable that it makes a mockery of being too precise with the other ones, right? I've said this so many times. For example, if you're a quiet player, you may never find yourself creating fret slap. But if you hit hard, you'll go, why is all this buzzing? I hate it. And you may have a heavy hand. The bottom line is it's got nothing to do with me. It's got to do with a physical constraint. And the physical constraint is the harder you hit a string, the more it will move the string, right? If you are a heavy player, there's no way around it. Your string needs more room to do that, right? If you've set the action, I've set the action really low for you, right, at both ends, and I flatten the neck so that I've done all the things possible, and I've leveled the frets. So I've done everything possible to give you the lowest possible playing action, but you're a heavy player. There's nothing we can do about it. You have to have more space, right? And the only way you're going to make more space is to go up at one or other, or all create space in all three of those dimensions by raising the first fret action, which suddenly will become hard to play. Your notes down here will go sharp when you squeeze them in because the string's too high. If you go up at this end as well, you create more space. You'll lose the fret slap, right? It'll play cleaner than that because it's not ever striking the frets, but it'll be harder to play up here and you won't like it because you've got a high action. Or we can do a third one, or on its own, we could bend the neck more and put more relief in the middle so that you've got a higher action in the middle and you lose some of that fret slap. Problem is, there's no way around it. If you're a heavy player, you will not have a low light action with a flat neck. It's as simple as that. There's no mechanics I can do. There's no machine like a Plek machine that will give you that if you're a heavy player. So I have to, and it's not something I've been fantastic at ascertaining, because in truth it requires asking a player to either demonstrate to me how they play or evaluate themselves, and it's quite difficult to do. But if I can hear or see how somebody plays, I'll have an idea of how likely it is that we can go for the lowest action possible, feasible. Now, for such a big variable, which has such a huge impact, I'll admit I've been pretty bad at ascertaining it for those reasons. It's hard to know, hard to see. And actually, if I went at setups and judged that everybody was a heavy hitter, then I'd never set a low action, because it just wouldn't be worth risking. Oh no, I can't stand that. That little buzzy thing annoys me. That's not fret buzz, that's fret slap. Now, I have to say, having put my foot down and said it's true, there are no ways around that. That's a constraint of physics and geometry, right? There's another aspect of it that's worth checking, is that on guitar like this, and lots of guitars, often lots of other things vibrate and resonate too, which can really get in your way. So one of the things I'm noticing straight away, I don't think it's the case here, but if you get a buzz that you can't seem to get rid of, check and make sure that your pickups aren't touching your strings. And actually, for the time being, this one is nearly touching that string. So I'd wind it back a little bit and just make sure. And it might even be, if you're into doing your setup, just for your own sake, take down these pickups out of the way. You can always put them back up. Again, just like everything else, there is no hard and fast rule about where they should go. Pickups, there is a working principle that people will say is conventional wisdom, i.e. it's approved by the crowd's wisdom. The nearer to the strings your pickup holes are, the greater the output from your pickup you'll get, the hotter the pickup will sound or play, but the less tonal dynamic you may find. That's what they say, and the further away, the lower the output, the quieter the pickup will appear to be, but the more tonal dynamics you will get. So that's all I can say. So people kind of contact me and say, what's the exact pickup height settings for a Yamaha Pacifica? And you go, well, some people say 3 millimeters from below the string when you held the string down at the last fret, right? So you get your thing and you go 3 millimeters-ish, right? Okay, but you might not like it like that. You might like it with much less output, but you could hear the difference in the tone. I'm not sure I can, but if you can, then you would set your pickups lower and you would turn your amp up if you need more volume instead of having higher output from the pickups. But it's one of those many things where there's no set thing. Now, things that go buzz, we've got, at the moment, I would say this is a pretty low action, okay? And so if you're a heavy hitter with this action, I can't really duplicate power chords very well. Hear that? That is, I would say that is a result of not being enough space. And I look at this and I think, you know what, it isn't enough space to move. Now, I'm going to adjust it simply because there's no point starting this and trying to level our way. Can I use this one? Sort of. There's no point trying to level our way out of a paper bag. No, trying to level our way out of this, what I call fret slab. Because the truth is, if you don't recognize the difference, you'll try to level your way out of it, and it'll just cost you a ton of fret metal that you can ill afford, because it won't get you, it may improve it a little bit, and I found that it usually does, but because you're kind of generally lowering everything as you take fret metal, so that tiny amount, even though it's not going to ruin your frets in one go, but even the tiniest amount of working the frets will create more space, and the frets will respond to that, the strings will respond by not slapping the frets like we just heard. So leveling will get you there, only because it's creating more and more of a gap altogether. But you have to sort of recognize that if you're hearing fret slap and not fret buzz, you don't want to be chasing it out with fret leveling first and foremost. You want to first of all create enough space using the truss rod as what it was intended to be used in the way it was intended to be used. And so that's what I've done just now. I have adjusted it. Now, if I want to be really kind of thingy about this, picky, this is going to be a longer one, I think, because I'm just going over more detail stuff while I'm at it, and particularly because I know Stu is a new player. What am I looking for? Oh yes, I'm looking for about 0.2, aren't I? Right. I said that was a nice, reasonable amount of space. Now, you're still in the right place pointing at me. I might try and do it this way around. This is left-handed, it's a bit of a thing. I'm going to use the bass E, and I'm going to hold down that there, and I'm going to pick my midpoint, which I think is about there, and let's see if I can fit this down here. I find this a little bit difficult to gauge whether anything's moving or not. Okay, that's actually a bit more than 0.2, so that's got a little gap under there. So having done the adjustment, that's given me a bit more space, possibly a bit more than I would normally go for, but let's have a, where, there, thank you. So that's a few little bits up here. Now that could be a high fret or a fret buzz as we call it. So I'm going to have a think and see, just have another check and see what we've got. Another check my normal line of sight, not the normal way I do it because this is completely upside down. Okay, I'm going to kind of put a tiny bit back on there, so I'm down to closer to the 0.2 that my target. And again, you have to sometimes move the strings to get your hex key in there. Sorry about the views, I haven't looked to see whether they're even on target for anything. So sometimes you have to move all of the strings out of the way to get purchase. It's terrible, isn't it? How clumsy, I mean, how unsophisticated is that? Right. And then sometimes you get hex key stuck and it won't do anything. Okay, so I've just taken a tiny bit out of that again. Something else I noticed about this guitar when I took it out of the box, it's got a little bit of creak in the neck pocket. There's nothing wrong with that, it just means we might check the screws. Very difficult to tune it left-handed like that. Okay, let's have a look. What have we got? We have got some relief. Yep. Still about 0.3 or 0.4, a tiny bit more. So, I advise if you get to do this, just do it until you've got it down to where you like it or where works for you. And the only thing that will happen to you, unless you turn it a certain amount, you can't get to the next segment, if you get what I mean. So it's an absolute pain. It's not in. It's amazing how difficult these things, how unscientific these darn things are. Get in there, turn. Yeah, you know, if it changes, the thing to do is find the measurement in the relief curve that works well for you, that you feel fits you. And of course you won't know that straight away. Look, that's so sensitive, that's gone the other way now. Yeah, you need to do it sort of trial and error really until you find the setting that fits you. And then what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to, from that point onwards, go back and find that whenever you need to. And particularly if the climate or whatever changes things around a little bit. So really important that you know how to do it. Now, the truth is, some people, you know, I've had people on this channel go, oh, 2 hours just to, haven't even got the fret leveling done. But you know what? Expect to spend this amount of time. Right, so I'm just going to do some things. I've kind of got where I think a decent amount or sufficient neck relief would be. Now, you know what, this is very, there's a point around which this is changing very quickly, and it's not very linear. It's either where I was and then it's in the right place, or it's wrong. So you have to be willing to go back. I've got to undo this a bit more, find the bite point of the rod, a little bit more relief. So it's turning around a very specific point here, and it's making quite a big change to this for a tiny movement, and it's somewhere in those turns that it makes that switch over. Right, a bit of curvature coming back in, but still not really enough. I've got a set of these things, but I'm not even sure if they get into the Yamaha very well. No, it can't get low enough. It needs the flat angle. If you try and use those kind of things and you can't get in, all it will do is end up rounding off your hex keys, which is not a good look. Okay, a bit more slack off. We'll get there. So you have to do this if you're trying to get it to where you want it to be. And this is, as I say, this is quite a specific point at which it does its thing. Okay. I think we've got a little bit of high frets there. Okay, so now I'm going to do something that's another important aspect of this, and that is you might find that you've now got the guitar in a place where you think you can clear up that little bit of buzz in certain spots and make it play better with a bit of fret leveling. But what I haven't checked so far is the high E bends, and on this left-handed guitar it's quite hard to do. It's actually not bad at all. Like that. Sometimes you find one right down here that chokes out if there's a uneven, you know, seriously uneven fret. Not bad. Now, obviously, bending this way is not something that people do much. I would say, in terms of bends, that's pretty good. I think there's a couple of spots that are making certain bits of these low frets buzz certain little spots here, but generally speaking, it's not bad. So like not there for the same pressure. Just a couple of little spots. Right, let's do it. Let's get it on the go, on the boil. Let's reset the camera position a little bit. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to get tea going. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this ready to level. It probably needs only the tiniest amount, but we'll get it to clear up those little buzzes on the bass strings particularly. I'm happy that we don't have to try and rescue any bends. They seem to be pretty good shape. It isn't the lowest action ever. It's over a little bit over 1.5, which is a tad higher than some guitars, but and these are a little bit, actually let's just see, what are they really? They're a little bit higher than 1.2 as well. So I'm just going to take half a turn on each of them, just in a bit. Let's go, in fact let's do quarter of a turn. Quarter of a turn drops down by, oops, that's a bit more. Quarter of a turn drops down by, believe it or not, about half a mil. Sorry, quarter of a mil. It actually translates almost completely. Directly. Which is something I discovered when I had to figure out how to set a floating tremolo in a way that worked. You have to preset it lower, a half mil lower than you want. And then the act of floating the tremolo brings action up as well. It's not bad. It doesn't sound great. It's not in tune, but I think the other thing that's definitely not right about this is the intonation right now. We're going to reset that anyway when it comes to doing the changing the saddles and putting new strings on. But the intonation, we should be somewhere close to 648 on the high E, and this is actually looking at the pivot point is looking like 652 on the high E. So everything's low, so it's way out. In fact, we're not going to use these, there's no point adjusting them, but everything's too far back. That's why it's sounding so grotty when I'm fretting notes as well. So we'll come to that at the end though. So break, coffee, quick grab something to eat, come back, go. Okay, welcome to the world of the bench. Frets cleaned, polished, everything cleaned up, frets shined, polished, softened, all the business. Now we are in the land of making the conductive shielding on this here guitar. One of the reasons I stopped using copper was because I wasn't entirely convinced that the claims of the people, who said that the glue was, who said that the glue was conductive. So the idea is, if you're going to, there's some tape right sticking it there. Yeah, so the idea of the shield is, it is what is known in the electrical departments as a Faraday cage, and that is a device. It's a container that you can put your electrical components in, and that you can ground this container. The whole of the container has to be continuous and grounded. And when you do that, the idea is that it allows you, or it helps to deflect unwanted radio frequency interference. Oh crap! Just realised. Sorry a second. I'm just going to get the charger. Yeah. So the Faraday cage is an electronic concept for trying to limit or prevent the amount of radiation, interference from electromagnetic radiation that gets into your circuit. And there are some guitars. Oh, look at this. Plywood. I might have known. I never knew that. Well, maybe it might not be, but it has a certain look of it. It's where it's routed. It's done in little shelves or ledges, so it does really look kind of plywoody. Anyway, yeah. So the idea of the cage is that you shield all your components in a continuous container of grounded metal, I suppose you could call it, with the idea that that continuous cage bounces off the unwanted radio frequency interference or radio waves, and it supposedly keeps your circuitry quieter. Now, honestly, I'm never quite sure how thoroughly this works. I find it quite difficult to tell and to test. So, I a lot of the times in the past I've done it with the best will in the world, hoping that it does some good the way it's claimed. And that's about as much as I can usually tell. But it's amazing that you see a lot of people who do tin foiling or metal foiling, and then you don't see any evidence that the foil is grounded anywhere. So there's lots of metal flying around in there, but unless it's a continuous electrical ground, then it won't work. Which is why, of course, it becomes so important, or it assumes a great importance if you want it to work, that when you put one piece of this copper tape on top of another, that when the two bits stick, you're not having the electrical continuity interfered with by a layer of glue. So you need metal to metal. And the people who make this stuff and sell it kind of are wise to that. So a lot of the manufacturers say that the glue is continuous, it is electrically conductive. That's what they say. Now, do I know it isn't? No. Have I actually sat down and tested it with my micrometers? To be honest, no. And it probably wouldn't be that difficult a thing to do, but I have to say I'm always never in the mood to do it. So what I do is I give it my best shot to shield off everything with the best will in the world, get it all covered, and then do my very best, make sure that it's grounded and all is electrically continuous, so that it stands a chance of acting as a cage. I have to say, the metal foil feels a load more reassuring and convincing than does the stuff, the paint. But actually the paint is easier to be certain that it's continuous compared to the metal. But the metal does look very cool, as you can see, with this lovely shiny foil. An open swimming pool type route here is a better of all the types to shield, because when you're doing individual pickup cavities, it can be a bit of a fiddle to get in and out with the tape. So the fact that this is you know, a big, what they call a swimming pool route. Makes the whole thing a lot easier. Now, when you go around on these things, you don't really want to snip off all the material. You do want the overhang, even though it looks a little bit untidy. You don't want that one there because that gets in the way behind the scratch plate. But generally speaking, you want the, where you can, you want bits to overhang, so that eventually, especially around the edge of here, because that will connect, you want it to connect with this metal here, which helps to keep the thing continuous, the shield or the cage continuous. So again, it's a, you know, it's more time consuming with, as you can see, with the tape and the paint. You can do it much quicker, which is another one of the reasons why I tend to do it that way these days. You know, to wielding sharp blades to cut back the copper tape all over the place. A little bit life-threatening. And then getting into some of these dips where you've got to sort of cut out can be a little bit tricky. Let you sort of get there in the end. A little gap down here is the little dips are for the screws of the humbucker to fit into. They tend to be longer than anything else. I tend to cut a load of bits, or tear a load of bits off to begin with and work from them, instead of grabbing hold of the roll every 5 seconds. So for the shield, we're going to do these two compartments. I mean, when you start and think too hard about it, I think realistically, I think you have to be a little bit more scientific possibly than doing this, because I mean, if you think about the way a pickup sits in the scratch plate, right, that pickup is sitting there with its front end pointing at the cosmos, which means that radio waves will be hitting the front of that pickup and there's nothing shielding it. Yes, there's some tin foil at the back, but the front is open, so the true shield, if you like, or the true Faraday cage, is something in which all of your equipment sits within the cage, literally as it says on the tin. And this, with all your kind of plastic fronted magnetic pickups facing the stars and the heavens, picking up who knows what amounts of cosmic chatter through those pickups, I really can't see how the cage can work that well. I kind of do this in the hope that it will offer some improvement. Right. Get some little hairline scratches on here, so I'm going to get the scratch polish on it, or the guitar polish on it afterwards, going over with that, and then I'll go over with a new car cloth, lint free, well not lint free, but a cotton cloth. So one of the things I'm going to do with this to give it its best chance, because it needs to be grounded, you'll need to run a ground wire from the common ground, which would be, for example, the top of the pot, running that to a connection on this copper to make sure that it's grounded, and we'll do that with an extra wire and a little screw and an eyelet. Yeah, what do they call, snap connector, not snap connector, eye connector. Is that what they call? I can't remember what they call them. There's so many things you keep having to think, try and remember their technical name, and I never can. Because I'm not an electrician, and I'm not a builder's merchant, and I'm not a this, and I'm not a that. I'm a sort of ordinary bloke who has to remember loads of tools all the time. Okie dokie. So what we can see about where the metal on the scratch plate extends to, the shielded bit of the scratch plate, what we can see is that it goes down quite close to this screw hole here. So the target would be to get some tape close to there. Something like, well, we could even do it half and half just to make sure, right down to and including the screw hole. That's one way of ensuring that we get connection with it. Right, a little bit more in there, and we are nearly there. Obviously we don't want any to fit into that little gap there, because that's the bit you'll see at the end of the scratch plate when it's back together. So the next thing after this, we're going to move into funky soldering time. I'm concerned about this bridge, and if I'm right about it and it's a little bit off, I think it will be a great surprise and pity from the kind of manufacturing, Yamaha manufacturing side, because it's not like them to have made a mistake like that. But my worry is that the nominal 648 line is actually too close to these things. Now I know that really the true scale length, even on the high E or on the high E, starts probably a little bit longer than the 648 if that's the nominal scale length. But if that's the case, then why isn't it 650 if that's really the truth? So I think, you know, you normally aim to start, or your target is 648 because that's the scale length, that's the twice the distance to the center of the 12th fret, which makes sense. Move this out of the way and throw this rubbish. So yeah, if we actually find that we can't quite intonate, then nothing I can do about it, I'm afraid. It's a Yamaha problem. There's nothing your seller could have done about it either, because they wouldn't know. It would be an example of poor quality control, which I hope isn't the case. Right, what can we see from that? All right, we're sort of right. Okay, so right this second, I don't want to do anything with this body right this second, so I'm going to put this back up on the side, because what we're doing right now is scratch plate adjustment. I'm going to need a screwdriver, one or two things, screwdriver, you get over there, get out of the way there, and out of the way there. Cutters. Okay. So, what are we going to do? Right, we are looking to, first of all, we're going to see whether these pickup covers work. That off because we can't really test it with those still on. There. So the first challenge is, do they line up size wise? Nope. Told you. Sorry about that. They don't. Remember what I said? Yamaha do things their own way. That's slightly smaller than anything. Let's see if I got any spares in here. This could be on for drawing a blank on a lot of this. I'm worried that I don't even have any black spares at all. Oh, one. That one fits. Right, what's the betting route? That's not, well, that's not quite right, but I'll show you in a minute why it's not quite right. Actually, lucky we've got one. Oh man, one. Just one. We've got nothing else anywhere. Where could they be? Oh no, white, black, no, white, no, white. Oh no, that's those are for Telecasters. I do not have another black thing. The only slim possibility might be, and I doubt it, but if I've got a spare throwaway old pickup sitting out there. Bear with me a minute. You could have that other one, but it's a bit odd. I'll show you. Right, come on. Any spare black, white. That's no good. It's a white one. Single coil spares, please, anybody. Single coil spares. Single coils. Single coils. Single coils. Down the bottom. Single coil spares. They're not really spares, they're all pickups, complete pickups, really. No. That is a Warman, that's a Warman. That's a Warman, that's a Warman, that is a Warman. And that is a Warman neck. Has it got anything written on it? Mix these. These are decent quality ones, man. Really want to sacrifice these, but probably wouldn't work anyway. But they're quality Alnico pickups, my friends. Well, that doesn't work anyway. So, okay, I've got an odd thing you can have, and it's. I'll put this back in its bag because that's not going to be sacrificed. You can have these two things I've got here. Right. If we must go black, I've got a strange slot, Seymour Duncan slotted thing, which will actually give you more black and a bit of white, which will look quite unusual. I've got a black one you can have under here, which will go in the middle one, and you're going to get a chrome. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Oh crap, what have I switched off? That. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to do it. Since you wanted black and yours won't work, I'll send these back with you, but I don't really need these. You can have these. So a bit of faff, right? So we've got a two. Don't know how much you can see now. Let's put that there and keep it there. Right. So we've got two single coil pickups. We've got the that's the bridge ground, and we've got the jack output there, and we've got mini pots, alpha pots here, and your switch, and we've got these pickups, which all of which have got to come out. Now the black pots shouldn't be a problem. They're much more standardised. What I don't know, even with the Yamaha arrangement, I don't even know the width of this thing. It should be the right sort of size, should be interchangeable. They'd be a bit dopey if they made it hard for you to upgrade pickups. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look where this goes. I'm going to snip that off there just so I can get it out of the way to begin with. And we're going to get this one and undo its thing. This is our Blues Engine bridge pickup. Nifty thing, and it comes with some springs. Now the one thing I don't know about this, and I won't know until we fitted it, is whether this pickup is in or out of phase with the Yamaha pickups. Okay, if we were replacing all of them, the whole lot of iron gears, a whole lot with iron gears, then they would be in phase together. But because we are going for one change out, we're going to have to test to see whether they're in phase with each other or not. So it's a bit messy, the wires on here. I'm going to tidy them up in a minute. So here we go. I can push my way in to get this in. Ancient technology, pressing a spring. tell you something I just can't be bothered to do, right? See this? It's too long, and therefore we have to compress it before we can even get it on. That means it ends up going flying everywhere for no good reason. It just makes our life harder. So we put it on the same size to begin with, because it's only ever going to start crushing or compressing from there. So we might as well get it going from the outset. So this is, it's all a bit of a mess here around the back. I'll show you. We'll tie it up with some clips, cable ties. Okay, first bite there. Yeah, it's just about through. That's good. Pull that out of the way. It's a little bit snug. I don't want to be cutting, chiseling, scraping away at the cutout if I can help it, because it's going to take more time. I've already been on this at least 3 hours now. Okay, so that's the bridge pickup now in. And we'll just tighten that up nicely there. Okay, so we've got a five cable pickup. We've got the pair there, and we've got 9 gear. We've got what we got. Ground and a ground. What's that one? Let's just have a look. Green and white is the join pair. We've got black is the ground. Black is the ground, and I guess this one's also a ground, so those two go together. Unless, of course, we have to change it because it's out of phase with the others. So we won't make any firm decisions about that one just yet. So we need to take these off now to get the weird and wonderful new covers on. What we're going to do, we'll actually have this one, the weird one in the middle, shall we? Will this one work? Oh, it's the same. No, that's too small. You said it works in the middle, doesn't it? Yes. Okay. That's cool. We'll pretend it's a Seymour Duncan, right? Nobody will ever know. Is it just about big enough to fit? You. Yes, it is. That's quite cool. Pretend it's a Seymour Duncan. Don't sell it to anyone pretending it is, because that wouldn't be true. It's a leftover cover of a Seymour Duncan that I've got on one of my guitars, but I didn't want the cover on it. So you got it for fun. Oh, it's just, how prehistoric is this? You have to balance this in here, press that against there with one hand that you haven't got. Hope that stays against there. Push that through there. Press that whilst holding that with your chin. This is impossible. Come along. There's the damn hole. See, that's the problem. It should line up. Come on. Come on. Just about. Come on, don't. Oh, come on, do go in, please. This was fun. I wanted this to work. Yes, just about. Come on. You can do it. Sorry. It doesn't make for good filmmaking because I'm sort of doing tight ropes and gymnastics to try and get things into holes. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Yes. Alrighty. That's alright. I quite like that. It's unusual. Yeah. Come on, it's black. That's the only way you're going to have a black one in that position. That's an absolute fact. Now, the thing I've been talking about, out of phase, what that means is some pickups have their wirings or windings an opposite way round to others. Yeah, that will just about do. Yeah, so normally manufacturers, when they make pickups, they're all the same, so you don't have to worry about this. But if you mix and match pickups, what often can happen is that pickups from one manufacturer will have a different winding polarity to pickups from another manufacturer. And when that happens, you can end up with this thing called out of phase. And out of phase is it's kind of almost, it's got a big scientific whole electrical reason behind it, but from our point of view, it sounds like the two sounds made by the two different pickups, when they're out of phase, they sort of cancel each other out. Look at that. That's not so bad considering what we started out with. No one's got one of those. No one but you has got one of those. Do you understand that? Yeah, so when they're out of phase, they cancel each other out, and they sort of, what's called this, one's frequencies scoop out. Get this the right way. I'm not chopping my finger. One frequency scoops out the other ones, so they subtract from each other, and you get this thin, instead of two pickups on together adding to the sound of one pickup, you get a sort of thinned out, hollowed out sound, or scooped sound, made famous by such guitarists as Peter Green, Brian May. He has that switchability built into his Red Special. So it's a tone that some people like. I'm not sure I find it very useful, but that's me. Whoops, I need to get the knob removal device. Okay, so the knob remover for these ear knobs. You put it under there like that. You put it down there like that. And then we don't do that because it's come undone. Get it back under. Hook it up. Press it down. It's quite difficult. It's alright, it's a bit easier when it's attached to the guitar body. Now while I'm taking these off, what we'll do is we'll also cut off this extra. There's always some cellophane that gets caught under there, which makes a horrible sort of crunchy noise all the time. It's a horrible thing. And if you cut it off, it makes you feel so much better. It's pretty much standard that it gets caught under there. Right, so let's have a look where this one goes to. Upside down, that doesn't really make much sense. Oh, you've got two tone knobs. Did you know that? Two tone knobs, no volume. I've got a bad feeling that oh yeah, that's volume. There's your tone. It's slightly different, but you can have a volume on a tone. Are they similar? Well, those are exactly the same as those. Volume and tone. Well, slightly mismatched, but there you go. Isn't it lucky I've got spares here? Right. So you actually want a volume and a tone. So we'll use one of your tones. See how well that fits on. That's okay. Tone, and we'll get the volume off. I'm not sure if you bought three, but I haven't seen three, so I think I can only see two just now. Come along. Oh, this is fiddly. So this has been pressed down really hard, so you can't get the little feet underneath it to release it, which is now starting to annoy me. No, it's definitely not been done. So I don't have any extra means to get this thing out done by bending this a bit. Right, get in there, stay there. Volume. Oh yes, take away the cellophane. So you can see all the little details that have to take place, cleaning, grading, so lots of little things, and none of it happens quickly if you want it to work all right. This is Saturday night in my world. Volume, tone, volume. Hurrah! Volume, tone. Slightly different family. Now, I don't know whether this will work on here. Nope. There you go. I told you. Somewhat annoying. No. Where's the thing? Spring trees, fill buttons, no. Acoustic pins, no. Small washers, no. So none of the things I need are in there. No good. So I'm going to have to look up somewhere else. Have you got any knob tips? Excuse the expression. No, that's a Les Paul one. It's a white one. Oh, there's a black one. What's the betting? No, it's a Les Paul one as well. Bloody hell. The white one. There's a black one. Come on, please. Oh, yes. God, aren't you lucky? Aren't you lucky? Right, let's get this mess tidied up. Okay, so we have two pickups here, which are a mess. Let's first of all, let's sort of try and tidy them up in a straight line so we can do something productive with them. Sorry. There's too much wire here, really, for my liking, but just, if I cut it, I'll just have to resolder everything, which is just more of a pain, really. So the extra long bit on these single coils for no particularly good reason. It just makes it really a pain, a messy pain. You two just get together there, and you come along here. You come along there, in there. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to tidy up the wiring a little bit because it's offending me. So I'm using little coloured tie clips for the fun of it. So yeah, what we don't know, speaking again of that out of phase business, we don't rightly know at the moment whether or not this bridge pickup will be in or out of phase with the others. Now what I've got here, I'm just going to cut off this. This is a kind of group earth thing going on here, and I'm going to just snip off the bridge pickup that used to be attached to there. That goes over to there, and I'm going to try and find a way of compressing these wires down a bit so that they are more manageable. personally, when it comes to doing this sort of thing, if it's my guitar, I tend to cut everything as short as possible. I know people will often leave wires full length so that maybe they think of selling the pickup later on, or moving it on to someone else, or even reusing it. So they might need all of the wire because they don't quite know what guitar they may put it in next, and so don't really know up front how it needs to be configured. Okay, so here we have what do we say, the black is the live, which goes to this one here. Over there. So, just whizzing things around. Now this is always a little bit tricky. So we've got a sorry, what did we say? Oh, I just chucked it away. So the red was no, I can't remember now. We said the red was hot signal. Red to the switch. Red to the switch. Black will go to earth, and the bare one with a sheath around it will also go to earth. So I don't think these have been tinned, first of all. That one has. Maybe they have. So I'm just going to go red to the switch. There we go. It's too long, playing the fool. Too long, and I'm trying to push it through something that's clogged up with solder. So let's just get rid of the solder there. Let's now put this through. Shall we go up through? Shall we? Let's go up through, bend it over. Now, can we comfortably go somewhere else? No, it's not so good. Let's go back that way. The difficult thing, you've got to sort of keep track of where the rest of the wires have got to go. It's not just about this one here that I'm about to hook up. It's about all the others. They've also got to go to their destinations. Okay, come on, bend back, hold yourself. There, thank you. I've ordered solder and it has not arrived. This is getting a bit desperate. I'm now going to redo this and bend the wire over so it lies down in the correct place. I don't want it sticking up. So that's the live hooked up. I'm going to put a bit of extra solder in two places on this alpha pot here, because I want, if we have an out of phase situation, I want to be able to very quickly swap around the red and one of the grounds, or I should say the black one, the red and the black. And there are two grounds. There's a bare one which has got a sheath on the outside, and there's the black one which is the, if you like, the proper ground, which is the one I'm holding now. But both of them will need to, look how uncompromising, no, uncooperative this big chunky piece of cable is. It's not good. This is not the right sort of, I don't like having so much wire. It's annoying me. I'll try and get this one into place. So this one here is the formal earth, the proper earth, and if we have to change it over for a phase shift, no, yes, an out phase, a phase switch, then I will come down, grab it, free it, and swap it over. Meanwhile, this is the what would be the cover ground to the pickup, which we'll ground separately so that we do have the option to reset, to switch the phase. If you often people stick those two earths together and shove the whole thing back in. If you do that, then if you do find yourself with an out of phase situation, then you have to separate those two wires again, because one of them has to switch place with the hot, and one of them has to stay stay grounded as well. And what I'm just doing now is I'm just going to prepare a wire that's going to be the wire that I take from the top of this pot, and I'm going to stick a little crimp eye thing, which has a proper name, terminal. One of those round terminal things. Here it is. And to use this the way I want to use it, I'm going to cut off the plastic sheath around the outside, but for that I'm going to need a piece of wood or something. Thank you. Because I don't really want the plastic bit in all of this, I just want the wood part. I don't know what you can see now, it's getting late, so I'm not really too worried about that film. Okay, where's my bit? Right, there's the what's it. I'm going to put that in there like that. I'm going to get a pair of pliers. I'm going to squeeze them on there like this, but I'm going to back it up, or do it with solder, so we've got a nice joint, or a nice eyelet ready to fit in, or screw I should say, to our copper tape, and that will ground the copper tape from this pot. The whole thing about grounds and stuff, never used to understand it, and I'm not an expert in electronics at all, but somebody kind of eventually explained it to me, that to think of it like this, you have the ground outside your house, and that's probably a good place to start point to think about the word ground. And so the ground outside your house, you want to sink a wire into that to ground it. And so the idea would be that if you're trying to imagine what the ground is, you want a continuous, somebody says ground the bridge, what you want is a continuous wire connecting your hand to the metal of the bridge, through the guitar, through the amp, through the house, electrics, and back out, literally sticking into the ground outside your house. So we've got the claw ground here, we've got the pot output wire here, which I may just extend a little bit because I think I've had to cut it a little bit. Yeah, so that if you think of what's happening if I'm grounding the bridge, well, what I'm doing is I'm making a continuous contact all the way to the ground outside the house, which that's where the term comes from. So quite like that idea. And of course, as the ground comes into your house, the wire is connected to the ground. As it goes through your electrics, there's a ground wire in the plug which grounds your amp, and then out of your amp comes the jack socket, and out the other end, or goes through the jack, through the ground wire in the jack lead, all the way up to your guitar, into the jack socket where it grounds the guitar, and then to the pots, and then everything that needs grounding touches the top of the pot, including, in this case, the shield here, the tremolo claw here, and so everything gets grounded to that world outside. Now, what I don't know at this exact moment in time is how good that is, or whether it works. So what I'll do is I'm going to get me a couple of tester cables, a little amp out, and hopefully the idea about this is to save me a ton of time. The last thing you want to do at this point is to connect up everything, and then screw all the screws down on the scratch plate, and then find out you've got a buzz, or you're actually you've got a phase, out of phase situation, and have to take it all apart again and correct it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up here. This is very difficult to handle wires like this, but it would be better than not. They never seem to be big enough to do the job. Those crocodile teeth things are just garbage, especially when you're trying to grab them onto a smooth piece of jack plug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach them to the ground on there, the earth on there. I'm going to attach this one to the live on there, or the hot signal, and then I'm going to turn on the amp, and we'll put it down into bridge position, turn on the volume and tone. Okay. Good. Now what we want to know is this in phase with that one? This is the new one. This is the only one it's going to be out of phase with. So, hey, look at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my little one thing, rather than putting it all together and getting some strings on to test it, if we get the tuning fork, then what we'll find is the tuning fork will act like a string. Right, now I'm not hearing a drop off in that middle position. If this was out of phase, I would expect that to sound thin compared to, whoop, that sounds horrible, compared to, look at this, you can't even stand it up. Right, that's middle only. That's bridge and middle only. There's no change, it doesn't go thin, the bass doesn't drop out of the tone. The bridge is a little quieter, but that's because the arm is away. I think that's fine. So I would be fairly confident to say we are in phase by chance, and that's the Yamaha pickups being by chance in phase with the iron gear. And there's absolutely no reason why they should be. So never expect, when you come to swap out pickups like that, never expect it to automatically be in phase, because chances are it might not be. In which case, if you sort of storm ahead, the really annoying thing, depressing thing, is when you kind of whiz ahead and suddenly discover, in fact, it's out of phase and you've got to take the whole thing apart and do it again. So I'm just going to pick up a load of bits that actually came out of your thing, and I'm going to put them into your spares box along next door to the pickup. Yamaha pickup spare in the box. Spare tape. Right, next thing I got to do is I've got to bring this down. I need a drill. I need a drill with a bit in it. I'll be with you in a second. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to consider before I put this together is, where do I wish to screw in my bridge claw? I'm going to use this fairly fair sized screw here, just moving things out of the way, and bits out of the way. Okay, so I want to basically place this back in here, and I want this. I don't even know what you can see and what you can't see. Oh, that's terrible, it's gone wibbling off on its own. I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely lousy. I need a proper camera mount thing, don't I? Oh, it's just going to sit there and sink, isn't it? Right, well, okay, so I'm going to decide where I want to ground. So I can pretty much do it anywhere. Probably better somewhere under here where there's probably room, instead of down in there, which is a bit busy. So I'm going to go in the side here like this. Okay, and I'm going to make a little hole here. And that's it. I need a screwdriver. I need a shot of attention. Don't want to end the cartoon in a cartoon graveyard. Okay. Okay, I forgot where the hole goes through. Oh no, it's there, isn't it? Where's the hole? There. Okay. Oh, and there's got to be a hole here Thrush I've lost too. Hot patootie. I seem to have lost track of where the balls came through. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. It's just as well. Otherwise I would have been lost. Yes, so don't forget, things have got to go through things to get to things. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I get my screw, and it's kind of very slightly difficult to do anything. I don't know if there's never a correct way of doing this, but it just feels, to me, it always feels mighty clumsy. So I line up my groundy thing, and I'm now lining up to ground, connect the cage or the shield to the common ground on top of that pot, and I just need to screw this in enough to make contact with the foil. That's nice. Okay, next thing I want to do is, now I'm sort of attached and I haven't got much room to maneuver, so I've now got to somehow get this red one out through this long hole and out through the jack socket. At the same time, I've got to get this bridge earth, which is now dropped back out because I can't see what I'm doing. I've got to somehow get that through and pull it through without it going anywhere else. Like that. I say, come on, you come through. Put that down there, tuck that in there, push this out through there, and the hope will be that somehow this goes all the way out to the jack socket, which just about probably maybe will. Whether we've got enough room to solder it or not, let's see what happens when this goes in. Right, that's the wire now definitely getting in the way. Very helpful, your ground wire. Okay, so now we've got a bit of a clump of wires sticking up now because of this, all the wiring that came with this thing here, and we've got a problem with it, is that if we want to live with it, it looks like it's kind of sticking up in the way of everything. So to be honest, right, I'm looking at this, and if we could spend hours really trying to figure out how to repackage this wire. The problem with this wire is the only place it can actually sit out of harm's way is really down in front of this pickup here, which I'm not entirely sure we can get away with that. Well, we can try it, but the problem is it's not going to stay there. It's going to want to flop around, and I can't make it stay there. And we can't go through there because there's a tiny little thing which goes alongside there. We can try that. That's about the only version of this I can think will work. If it doesn't work, then we'll have to strip out the wire and start again, which is a pain. But this is the problem of having so much wire in the space. It's not doing anyone any good, and it's just sort of sitting there making problems. So where the hell is that gone now? Vanished. Brilliant. So all of this in a way needs to be a lot longer because it's just being an absolute pain. This needs not to double back to there, which is an equal pain. That needs to go all the way through there, but it doesn't want to go because it's doubled up on itself. See how much fun this is? Not. I mean, even if we had another 5 feet of this wire, it wouldn't make it that much easier. We could pull it out there, which we can do, but we're still struggling to fit all of this stuff in through this stupid little gap that's been set aside for us, which actually is kind of nigh on impossible. I I can't see it getting through there, to be honest. It has to come directly alongside, halfway alongside this thing, just about there. And then it's now getting in the way. It's just crap. Right, I'm going to have to look down here. Yeah, we're fighting with, that just about goes, but can I reach this? No, that's not through. Nor is that one. That one's probably not. So you can see it's just getting 3 wires to go into 3 different places at once is an absolute pain, a royal pain. Now what I'm seeing is, I'm not even sure I've got enough room here to solder this onto the jack socket. So it kind of feels like we're on a loser to begin with. I'm just going to quit this. So look, waste of time there now, half an hour wasted trying to do that. We're working with far too much wire in here. So we're going to lose all this extra wire, I'm afraid, on your humbucker, because I can't get it through this stupid little space here, which is a design problem. What's the point of that, really, other than to constrict the space and make it impossible? If this was my guitar, I'd chisel that lot right off, because there's no positive reason for it to be in there. So little things like this, Stu, okay, holds this all up. I'm going to write now back to square one. Get this out of the way. Come back to here. Look at all of this. Complete waste of time. Cables coiled up, getting in our way. Absolutely good to nobody. Right. Okay, so all of this. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Right, we need that much to go to there. Okay, we don't need all of this stuff. Sorry. It's just going to absolutely make it impossible to shut the cover. Right, and same with all of this. We've got an absolute ton of wires we don't need at all. They only need to go as far as, let's cut them off here first. Let's make sure we know which one's which. The yellow is in the middle. We know it's the middle. Yellow is in the middle. Yellow is in the middle. As we know that's yellow, we don't. Right, you're off there. Yellow is in the middle. You're off there. Okay, so that we need. This is too short now. Can't be asked with that. That's coming off, and I'm going to remake that with a new decent sized piece of wire, so we can actually do something. So you can see that this is a right old pain. And I have not got a proper, that's what I need to look for tonight actually, a proper camera mounty thing for this devicey thing that I've got in here, because at the moment this has just been not very good. Okay, let's get that off there like that. Get this off this end like that. So yes, so you know, you start with something, you've got extra wiring suddenly introduced, the thing won't go together, you have to start again, strip it all back, which then becomes a complete, might as well rewire the whole thing 3 times over, as you get what I mean. So this is my jack socket wire being prepared. I'm really short of solder now. I've got a few more bits hidden around somewhere, but if I don't get this stuff through the post, I don't know where it can have gone. It's not exactly the most exotic stuff in the world, is it? Right, let's go and tin these bits. Tin there, tin there. Come on. Well, I was going to go to the shop, but that's gone. Right, cut these back to there. Cut these back to there. Right, this one, so we've kind of extended that considerably. So I'm going to just, for the sake of sanity, I'm going to cut that one off there. Sorry if you can't see anything. It's late now, so I need to get done. Right, taking that one off there. Put our pot through there. Let's take that back. Come on now, you. Like that. I'm going to put this earth onto there. Yeah, it's just it's annoying. Little things they do like that. That little bridge of wood inside the body there, that just makes it nigh on impossible to feed wires through it. It just keeps you kind of tied up there the whole time. Okay, so there's my new jack socket. That goes through okay, that will work, that works. Okay, now let's tidy up this stuff. We've got to strip this back still. Let's strip it back quite a bit. Come on, dumb fingernails. Right. Okay. What did we have? The green and the white were the pair, the red and the black were the what's it, and the bear was the bear. The bear was the bear. Okay, so we're gonna cut these back and join them with a little bit of solder. If you were going to put a coil split in, you would split these apart again and use them as two parts of the coil split switching arrangement. That's what they're for, but when they're joined together they just make a continuous ongoing road for the signal to go down. So it just goes straight down both of them and doesn't stop. Find me a bit of this stuff, see if I can. Okay, so we need a couple of different bits of wire here. We'll leave the hot and the ground quite long. What we'll need to do is we'll need to push those three. First of all, this one is frayed and it's annoying me. So all of this, because you can't get that new wire in through the space that we've got available, and I don't want to take a chisel to it and hack it to bits. Okay, so that's actually good. We'll leave that length. Have I got? No, that's not that. That's that. Let's get a bit of this. Come on. We need a bit about that long. Cut that off there. Let it just go. There it is. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to now put a little bit of shielding, no, what's it called, shrink tubing stuff, and it's not quite short enough. Bit of shrink tubing over there to keep this, the bulk of this ground wire safe and away from out of trouble, basically. Oh my god! Like that. In fact, what I'll just do now is just get this, do that. That. That's that. Right, now the next thing I do is I'm going to push these three through this blue bit, and then I'm going to use the blue bit to fold the coil split pair down there and cover them off. Keep them out of harm's way. Okay. Stay there. Stay. Okay, so now we've got our hot and our earth. Just to get a little bit of wire exposed. 1, 2. Tin these. And these are going to go, one's going to go to the pot and the red's going to go to the, whatchamacallit. In fact, we could now, because we're pretty sure we know these are in phase, we could actually now put the two earths together, because we don't have to run the risk of separating them out and having a big old worry about which is which. But as it happens, I ain't going to do that. So now I don't really know. Let's have a look at this. This is just so much stuff getting in the way. So let's go. The space between the pickups is the most space, right? Everywhere else is a premium. So let's just go between the pickups now and tighten this off. Right, there's our first clip. Then we go this way, put a crimp in it or a corner in it. We go this way, and with these wires we're going to go a bit to the earth and a bit to the earth and a bit to the thingies, which is about there. So we'll take this off, and we know that the yellow's going in the middle, right? Yes, we know that. So here, now we can get this one up here and together with that one. Let's try and put those together first. And keep them out of trouble. Right, and I think the best place for any of this gubbins is to try and live in that space there, where there's a gap. And then we've got to come, I mean, what the hell is it? It is directly alongside the middle of the pickup. So the only space it can come through is this little bit here, like that. But anyway, so we need to go to the earth about there. So we need to cut both of these back from here. And then we'll join the earths together again. Like that. So we know this one here is the middle one. This one here is the top one. And we can get these two together here. Like so. My good heavens. No chance of actually being able to hold these together in some sort of meaningful way. And just hold them there long enough to do something with them. Please. Thank you. Okay, so that is the yellow middle. So that's the middle. We're going to go from there to there. Right. Cut that. Take that back. This is the middle. We all know that's the middle. First of all, going to tin it a bit. Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Tin it. Wrap it a bit more. Tin it. Right, the middle. Take the middle out. The middle out. Let's use the sucker. Middle coming out. Empty. Thank you. Middle. Through there. Thank you. What am I thinking? Let me do this first. This one is number 1 in the sequence. Number 1 in the sequence. Tin it. Tin it. Tin it. Tin it. That's clear. Number 2 in the sequence is here. Middle, I should say. Middle. Number 1. Number 1. Breathe. Let's do this again. A bit more. Thank you. We should stay in the place I put you. There we go. and that. Snip the excess, snip the excess, snip the excess. That's that and that. Okay, so now we're going to go red to this third one here. Really? Hang on, brains. I'm losing my thing. I've gone back to front here, and that one's in the middle. Was that the first one? Yes, it should be there, shouldn't it? Dopey. That was there, idiot. We're just off back to front, the wrong way round, eh? Okay. I see, that looks good, except I can see that the wire's gone through and it's in danger of shorting out underneath. Right, now we need some solder on that. Solder on here. It's going to go to there. Come on. Okay, so we now are going to the ground, first one in the line. Trim. I'll test this before I close up the patient and all that type of stuff. Okay, so now we have 3 grounds, earths to go to ground, and we can do it now by bringing things down to where they're comfortable to go and slamming them down. And it's quite difficult to see when you're doing this because you get dazzled by all the light bouncing off the chrome, etc. Okay, that's the single coils grounded. Here we have the shield of the humbucker, which we're going to, that is just ever so slightly covered up. I need a bit clearer, that's it. Let's make sure it gets on. And then I'll test it all before we try and, this time, fit it back into a much neater little arrangement. Okay, so that is the humbucker cover. Stay there. There goes the ground anchor. And here is the final one. Just get it up here without much trouble. Having said that, I don't think I can. Here comes the sun. Trying to hold something that's tiny on with a pair of pliers with my left hand. It's not working very well. Okay, that is the ground. Now, there's one thing I'm not quite thrilled with, and that's the shield ground, which sort of went a bit adrift there. So let's chuck a load more on top of there. Come on. Thank you. Et voila. Right, one more test. Make sure I've got the order of things in the correct way round. Pain, absolute pain, of course, but hey, we must do it. Nothing quick is ever easy, or something like that. What am I trying to do? Yes, the jack output. Thank you. That of all the things, when you're kind of at this stage and you've been doing stuff for ages and it really is time to get it finished, then when little things ping off like that, it's like a take of the mick. Okay. Thank you. Good. We're in order. Alles klar. Alles in Ordnung. Or something like that. Okay. Right. Shoving those things out of the way. I've got one more go at fitting this all together. And still got to do a bit of polishing on the outside to clean it up, but let us hope we can get off these things and get this into its various places. So the first one is the famous, can we screw in the earth ground? Can we? Let's try. Everything flops forward to try and annoy me. You get under there. Thank you. Just do what you're told, sort of. You get in there. Do something of what you're told. You in there. Right, so we've got a lot less stuff. And guess what? It's still in the way. Holy crap. It's this wire, stick it down inside there, close that down, push that through, get it under there, over the edge, that stupid little bridge into there, and then there's something in the way there. Lift that up, the rest will flop out, and that is down there, around there. It's tucked in there, but that's sticking out of there. That's in the way of that, that's in the way of that. Oh, I hate this. I'm absolutely, seriously, wit's end with this now. Seriously, this is the worst design I've ever come across. This actually will not go in there. I cannot get this out of the way, and I cannot get it over this little ledge. Seriously, oh man, really, what is... This is just... This is pathetic. I'm sorry. This really is a joke. You cannot be serious. Right, you are staying there. Nothing is going to move. That's what you want to end up with. That sticking out. Pray there's a wire sticking out the other side. Lord. You see the tension and the fed-upness rising to levels of extreme fed-upness at that point. Yep. Because I was extremely fed up. Right, let's get these various things back together. I've got to solder the what's it and then the what's it. That goes with that, that goes with that, that goes with that, that goes with that. So by the time, this is always what happens, by the time you get this thing together, the whole thing's covered in fingerprints because you've been struggling, handling it to get it into position for hours because it won't go and you're having to bend wires and stuff. It's so 1950s, it's beyond a joke, really. do the socket, and then we're nearly there. A matter of stringing it up, oiling the board, stringing it up, stretching the strings, and setting the intonation, unless we come across a fatal Yamaha flaw, which I hope to goodness isn't the case, because that would be a very sad day for Yamaha if that were the case. Because most other aspects of this guitar, you know, are pretty good. Okay, here we are. So, last little bit of frustration coming up now with a jack socket that basically is almost impossible to handle when you want to come and free up the solder like this. Right? You melt the solder, you try and get a touch, get a purchase on it, and nothing flips its way out. Well, here, got it. That little arm thing won't hold this. It'll try and it will just spit it out when I least expect it. So I'm hoping that I at least got a couple of free holes to get through there. Right, first one, second one. Okay, so we're going to go with, great place to make a last minute mistake this. It's so easy to do. Okay, the live bit, hot bit, through there. Let's get it stuck on. Let's get it soldered. Double check it. Yep, tip, hot, white string, white wire. Fantastic. The number of times I have put this on wrong, the wrong way around, closed it up, and then wondered why it didn't play. And then it's taken me, you know, hours to go back and finally end up at the jack, taking it apart, going, oh God, no, I did the jack the wrong way around. It's amazingly simple to do. I mean, easy to make that mistake, if you're me, that is. Okay, I'm going to just pull that off to one side. Last bit of solder. Go. Okay, so just trim this back so it doesn't catch. And the problem is, well, not a problem, it's difficult to, when you've closed this up, it's difficult to fit in any more wire if you've got a slight surplus of wire. That's an absolute extra pain. So it kind of makes you want to have to take that apart again and try and squeeze all that back in. But I'm not taking the risk of taking that apart and all the gubbins getting caught up in the thing again. I will not do it. It's actually quite tight, so that's good. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare that bit of that done. I'm just going to move the camera one more time. Lorky lorkies, here we go. Right, polished. It's a bit dusty. You can't have a black guitar without it getting dusty, so I have to run the duster over this one more time before it goes in its bag later on. Now, what I'm looking for is the final countdown. The little screw to shut down the, close up the, you know what I mean, truss rod cover. The neat little slotted in truss rod cover. Drop in the screw and we're away. Okay. Right, so the next thing is I'm just going to wash my hands quickly because of the, I've got strings coming up now. We are now past 10 o'clock. So I've been doing this now for, what, 4.5 hours? It's taken a long time, Stu. I just thought I'd let you know. Alright, it is a long time. It really is. Okay, we're going to do some oiling off the fingerboard any second now. Starting with this cloth and this oil. And then we are strings on, we are stretching them out, and we are intonate. And like I say, I'm holding my breath, but if this thing will not intonate properly, it'll be an unfixable, well, not within reasonable bounds of reasonableness, would be a relatively unfixable problem, I'm afraid, which would require complete removal of the bridge, refitting the bridge, possibly routing the hole a bit differently to move the bridge slightly. So I don't know. I'm a bit nervous, a little bit the opposite of optimistic, I'm afraid. I think the word is pessimistic, Samuel. My name isn't Samuel, by the way, it never has been, but 4, right, here we are, 9s. Let's put the big one in foist. Why don't I close up the shot? Well, I can still string it from here. Right, we'll get them all through, and then we'll put them on, and we'll have a look at the, whatchamacallit, the intonation in a short second. So this business about tuning stability, remember I said at the beginning, days ago, I said that your tuning stability comes down to 2 things. Your quality of your nut slots, i.e. whether they pinch the strings or whether they have friction, cause the strings to suffer from friction. Quality of your nut slots and the unreleased slack in your strings. And the point here is that if you take care of the quality of your nut slots by fitting a Tusk nut and making sure that the slots are the right height and they're not pinching, but Tusk never does, which is pretty good. But if you get the nut slots right and your first fret action right, then you and if then you stretch all the slack out of your strings, you will have a guitar that stays and plays in tune. And it's those 2 things only, and it actually has nothing to do with new tuners. New tuners are good in that they can make your guitar smoother to tune, but they don't make it stay in tune. Okay, so I don't know what you can see from there. I'm so sorry. Let's just bump that up there a bit. Just going to now, I'm going at the top of these here easy lock tuner things. When you're stringing, make sure first of all that you pull up and make sure the ball of the string is gone into the correct place, and then is it stiff? Line all these up properly, and then we're going to wind the first one on, and I'm sorry the camera's in the wrong place, but I hold the string and I go over the loose spare string the first time round, and then I push the held string under the loose string, pulling the loose string up so it's out of the way, and then the playing or the held string goes neatly under the loose string, and you get a kind of locks itself off nicely. Stay there, don't move. Okay, and that's the way I like the stringing to go, and then we cut it nice and close, so that's tidy. And then we do the next one the same way. Now it does help, which I haven't done, it does help to have all your top holes on these tuners lined up to go in the right place to begin with. So I haven't done that, so I'm going to have to fiddle them as they go. Yeah. Anyway. Sorry, the camera's in the wrong place for a good look at this. It's how it is, I'm afraid, on this point of time. Right. Now we'll get the tuner out in a minute to do the intonation test, but I'm not going to do the intonation test until, or setting the intonation, or checking the intonation, until we've got all, or most, if not all of the slack stretched out of the strings, because I don't want it going out of tune while we're doing it. Up, back, a fret's worth, hold it down, whoops, gone on, he's put it onto the wrong peg, well done, start again, through, in the slot, drag it back, hold tight to the string, let the loose one go under, second time round push the held one under the loose bit of string sticking up, and that will sort of lock itself off. Snip off, baby. Oh, thanks. we're nearly there. My wife is probably wondering what's happened to me. Of course, she probably can't call me because I'm filming. I should be calling the police next. Well, I prefer to have got this done now than spread it over today and tomorrow. It's nice to do in one go. Okay. So the nice thing about doing it this way is once we do the fret leveling, we don't have to do anything else. There's no more setup to do. We can take the neck off if we wanted to. We can do the fret polishing. We can take it over to the bench, do soldering or whatever. And when we come back and put strings on, providing I haven't adjusted the saddles particularly anywhere, and we can always double check that, but we come back to it and put the strings on and it will go back into the playing position we had it when we were fret leveling it. Come on you, get done up. Yeah, it's a good touch, those little black bits around on this guitar. It does a good little, adds a good little feel to it. Now, the 9-gauge strings are quite fine, so when it comes to the stretching game, I have to be very careful because I don't want to waste a set of strings. Now you can't see anything now, so I'm just going to sort of bedding the strings in a little bit. Now if I was filming with the Sony camera, this wouldn't be a problem. You'd see it. So I don't know how I'm going to work this out with the iPhone, but I'm going to figure some sort of way of doing it. We'll get there. Right, so I've sort of bedded the strings in a bit, and now I'm going to go and get the noisy thing that goes. And I also need, I need the jack plug. Thank you. Jack plug. Now, here's the stretchy bit that you need to know. Oh yeah, you can see okay. So, clean hands, get your strings and push with thumb and forefinger to stretch the strings all the way up and down the string. Go to the next one, do the same. Quite a bit of force. You're not pulling it this way and that way, you're just pressing between the thumb and forefinger to give it a good stretch. But not too much stress on any particular sharp point. Your thumb and forefingers typically not being very sharp. Okay, so I'm stretching these out as much as I can. With the 9s, I sort of occasionally back off a little bit. Can't afford to break the strings. Get in there. going to do a test now, do a bit more stretching in a minute, but first test I'm going to do is the intonation, because this is what's had me worried since looking at the bridge arrangement earlier on. Now, I could do it, I'll do it on the bench to begin with, but ideally I would like, you'd really want to be able to do it on this side, but let's see. Maybe that's not so bad. My worry is it's too long. Long string. It's too long. It needs to go forward. So what we're saying is, I think it's, well, I've gone as far forward in the E with the E as I can possibly go without it falling off, and pushing the B and the G forward where they really want to go. Beyond this, there's no room because of the length of the screw, and that may be, if we compare the screw lengths on the ones we took off to these, there may be a slight difference, but there's not enough room for this to go any further forward because of the tremolo screw. So if this isn't there, then that's a design problem with the guitar, a construction problem in the factory. Just on. My God, that's close. Sorry about my arm in the way. Just on the mark. That is as close as I would like to get, and that is the position of this bridge, and those screws is not good. What you really want is it needs to be forward this way, and these saddles need to be further that way, so the whole bridge should be about 3mm that way. Not good, Yamaha, but I'm happy to say we got there in the end. Well, look, this was a long drawn out thing. You kind of think that maybe something like a Yamaha will be dead simple, but there's just to show you yet again that it isn't, right? And that it puts up quite some fight to get right. I'm just going to check the heights of these here things, and if we'll just tweak them if we've gone wandering. Yeah, see, look, blimey. We've gone a-wandering. These things change just by breathing at them. Okay, these have gone down. That fell off, that's why. That's the start point. Oh my God, that looks like it's going to fall off again. Okay, 1.2. 1.2. That's down. How did these move? Nothing's happened except they've moved on their own free will. Right, well, that's cool. They'll play even better. Huh. Holy cow, that's good. That's no good. Oh, did I actually set these? You know something? I didn't, did I? I did it with the other ones. Thanks for spotting that, Sam. You divot. See, set it up, of course, with the other ones, and I forgot. I didn't play too badly, all things considered. It was much too low, but hey. Right, there we go. Down we go. A little bit with that one. Down we go. Down we go. Very nice. That's good. Tiny bit on that one. Tiny bit on that one. Huzzah! Right. That's better. Well. Ladies and gentlemen, we are done. Yamaha Pacifica. Change of pickup covers, scrabbling around to find things that will fit because the ones bought didn't fit, tweaking around with the nut, building the nut, getting the neck relief right because it was all over the place. There we are, the Yamaha Pacifica. Finally done. Stu, I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy learning on it. Okay, we're done. Thanks for watching. See you another time. Hopefully the next one will be a little shorter.